Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living.
I live and breathe and work every day with higher consciousness energy symbols that dissolve old patterns and activate the creative intelligence in ourselves. That is really the foundation of my work. I rarely say that, but symbols are really geometry. And you may be familiar with sacred geometry and you've wondered, what does that really mean and what makes sacred geometry sacred? I didn't do very well in my geometry class when I was in high school. But how does it actually impact or play out in our lives? What did the ancients, the Druids, the Mayans, the ancient Egyptians know that we fail to consider in our daily lives? Those things can change everything, personally and collectively. And we are at a crossroads yet again, where this kind of consideration and this kind of information is so needed. And if you stay tuned to find out more, you'll be introduced to my guests who will be able to share with you an incredible wealth of experience around sacred geometry. Well, welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio. I am Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute. It's the home of the quantum connection process. So head to the Baca Institute to discover, by taking a quiz, your own quantum connection with your inner guidance, with Source. Because we're each designed to connect with Source differently, in our own unique way. And knowing your own style is the first step of aligning with your inner guidance at a level at which you probably haven't even imagined possible. And that is really the secret to creating what you want in your life. When you receive that direction, when you know that that's true, when you trust it, and then you take action. So, I want you to join me in welcoming Gail and Gregory Hoag, who are leaders in the world of sacred geometry. They are authors of Sacred Geometry, the Universal Language of Divine Alignment. With over 4 decades of dedicated expertise in the realm of sacred geometry, they have pioneered groundbreaking technologies and new discoveries that have transformed the lives of tens of thousands across the globe with their teaching and their tools. They have harnessed the power of divine archetypes to amplify higher dimensional energies and elevate the human experience, catalyzing personal and spiritual growth. I want you to welcome with me Gail and Gregory. I am so really excited to, first of all, to have met you. We discovered we're all in Colorado and we can actually meet up in person. But I want you to welcome you to the show, to Wisdom Talk Radio.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting us today, Laurie.
Thank you, Laurie. I'm really excited to delve into where we're going to take this.
Yeah.
Because we have so much that's in sync here. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
I know. I mean, it's like, I think we need to start with somewhere basic because we want to bring people in so that you can all enjoy whatever is going to emerge today. And knowing that what we're talking about is these higher consciousness energies, and that there's more and more of that being made available today. So how is sacred geometry a part of that? And maybe we need to even say, what is sacred geometry?
Well, that's a great foundational question. And I love to start out doing something that's sort of a little more general and, help people understand that what I find so fascinating and important about sacred geometry is that so many of us are looking for, how does the universe work? What is our relationship to this
Mhm.
universe. It's not just this crazy random thing. And
Mhm.
sacred geometry is an expression. It teaches us, it shows us with everything in nature around us that there is pattern and rhythm and cycle and very incredible precision in the way we go from just pure raw energy into
Mhm.
form in this physical dimension.
Mhm.
So there has to be a way that that energy travels in, and we know that it's going to keep doing the same things over and over again. So, year after year, you're going to see the same cycles with our plants and our trees and the way that the mountains change. And, here we are so blessed to be in a beautiful place like Colorado. We see those rock formations that have formed over millions of years. And there's something there that is a foundational way that it's always going to be created. And so that is really, the essence of sacred geometry is that it is the construct
Mhm.
that brings it all together of how we go from energy into form. And like you spoke about earlier, the ancients, they recognized it and they
Mhm.
realized that when they have an understanding of it, then they can build their community, their sacred places based
Mhm.
on those principles. And so that I think is such an important part of the recognition of who we are and what this creation is really about.
Yeah, I mean, that's my foundational question really is how does life work? And you've taken it into the how does the universe work, which is really in some way one and the same.
Mhm. And
So,
oh, I'm sorry,
no, go
Laurie,
ahead.
but
There's so many
Mhm.
questions I have.
I know, I know. Um, and there are so many aspects to creation. I mean, life itself follows very particular patterns and rhythms and cycles and numbers that you're going to find everywhere from DNA to, the planet and the universe and the way the galaxy is formed. And so, what I think is really essential to understand about sacred geometry is it's recognizing what are the archetypes that the universe uses to build things, to lay out dimensions, to create relationships so energy can flow. And when energy does flow through a geometry, that's when we know we've hit that sweet spot, the spot of it being sacred. Because just having a drawing on a piece of paper does not make it sacred geometry until we can bring it into our physical reality and create something that allows spirit to move through it. And when that energy that is spirit is moving through a pattern, a rhythm,
Mhm.
then we are working with sacred geometry.
And in the way of working with that and through that energy, it
Mhm.
there's something I want to ask about how that works in manifestation. How we take that and being the co-creators or the creators that we are, how do we then you're talking about the focusing of it. It's so hard to ask these questions, but you're talking about the focusing of that energy through a geometry so that it indeed taps into that universal life force. Is that right?
True,
Okay.
true.
And then what is the next expression of that or the next movement of that?
Well, you see, here's the issue. That is not separate from us. However, we have made it separate from us. And so that's really the issue and what we're really speaking to here. How can each of us start to avail ourselves of this connection, of this energy? And I have
We've
some
always been part
slides.
of.
Right.
And so I have some slides from our book, and I want to share something in here with this basic concept
Okay.
that we are like an iceberg, and in the way that 90% of the iceberg is hidden. When we are talking about the human being, we are much more than just our physical body. You see, that's the part that we can all see and relate to, and and bumps into things. But the higher dimensional realities that are part of that iceberg, all the way up to soul, all these are different dimensions. And what is supposed to happen ideally is that energy flows from source, like the boat pumping oxygen to the deep sea diver. We depend upon soul for our existence. And if we want to manifest, we need to draw upon the fullness of every aspect of our being to create in this reality. But what happens is this is an image showing us how the electromagnetic pollution, the stress we experience, all the negative emotions we generate, the fear, the judgments and the beliefs, these block the flow of higher dimensional energy.
Yeah.
And even what goes on with all the toxins that are building up in our systems
Right.
and our environment. So all of these different aspects of our reality are blocking the fullness of who we are. So that's the issue of being able to manifest. We need to draw upon that higher connection, because so often, you know, when someone is being instructed on how to manifest, one of the main things is get into a place where you're feeling wonderful, where you're feeling happy, where you're feeling connected, where you're feeling joy, because negativity does not allow for creation. It just doesn't work. We're caught in our own stuff. And so what we have started doing over the last 40 years is building tools that, similar to what's behind me and what I'm wearing, that can vibrate the same as the universal archetypes that exist. So what was put into those ancient churches, what the builders of the pyramid were doing to create an energy flow, that geometry, and then what's gone on with Stonehenge and so many of the different divine circles. These are working with particular geometries, working with time, sometimes, you know, certain aspects of the year for the equinoxes and for the solstices. The time when the sun is rising at a particular place is a very important energetic time. And so how can we bring all these energies into something like, that's what we've done with the pendants, where we can literally wear something where we can shift the vibration of our body to be able to be in that space where we feel good, where then the serendipity starts happening, because we're playing with universe, which is a natural order of being.
Yeah, we're really embarking on the true meaning of what it is to be a co-creator.
Exactly.
So you've mentioned the pendants, and we may as well touch on those. Now, our podcast listeners can't see anything.
Oh, they
So-
can't.
So, you know,
Okay.
our YouTube viewers, they can see what you're talking about. But Gregory, you did a beautiful job. Even though you were showing slides, I was listening from what if I'm just hearing this?
Okay.
There was no difference. I could follow everything that you were saying, and I appreciated that. So recognizing that people aren't going to be able to see, some people won't be able to see the pendants, although I do invite you to go onto YouTube if you're moved. Could you share a photo of them and speak about what you are both wearing.
Okay.
Ah.
Here they are. And one of the things that we've done on the surface of the pendants, these are not, these are two sides of one pendant.
Okay.
You see, we have a side that when we turn one side toward the body, the energy starts flowing down and it's more connecting into the earth. You feel your heart center more. You feel your lower chakras and just being supported by the mother of creation, Earth Mother. And then the other side takes us upward into the higher realms. It's more mental, more focused. So when we were writing our book, I had that side toward my body for quite a while. But sometimes afterwards, I would start to feel like, oh my goodness, I'm almost being knocked out of my body. And then I realized, oh, I have to turn the pendant over and get grounded again. Because you see, these patterns are really looking at geometry in a way where, like the geometries behind me, as a geometry turns, it has different perspectives from the face, the edge, and the point. And so if we imagine a cube like that, it would look pretty different. Whether we looked at the face, it would look just like a square. Or if we looked at the edge, it actually looks like a long rectangle. And that rectangle has a very particular proportion. It is the square root of 2 times the length of the short side, always when we turn a square, a cube on its edge. And when we look at the point, we see 2 6-pointed stars. It's kind of like, well, 1 6-pointed star, I should say, where it goes into something that's working with a square root of 3. And that's just by looking at it from a different perspective. And if you project those onto a flat surface, that's what we've done with our pendant. So we could put the energy of many different three-dimensional geometries into a simple two-dimensional pendant. And then inside, we have over, as I told you earlier, over 35 antenna systems, circuit boards,
What does that
oscillating
mean?
crystals.
Okay.
What is it? Oscillating crystals. We have something that generates photons because we have a fiber optic cable with a coil around it, a coil of titanium. Titanium is a very wonderful energy to it. And that has a crystal that oscillates at a particular frequency, and it's soldered to 2 different geometries inside the pendant, and that coil runs in between them with a fiber optic core to it. And so the photons that move through that are generating a field, are generating a flow of energy. So that pendant is alive, and we hook it up, we connect it to some chambers on our land that are connected to the entire grid of the planet. Because that's one reason we were guided to get this land in Colorado, is it has an earth entry point. And we work with the vortexes on our land and are having a wonderful time playing with the energy here. I love it. I don't
And-
want to leave.
And look what you keep creating.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And and it's all about, Laurie, it's all about maintaining the connection, our divine connection.
It is.
And like
That
we were,
is what it's all about, period.
it's,
So what do you
it
mean?
is.
What, no,
Yeah. And
what do you
so
mean? How are these geometries? how does one work with them in order to maintain one's alignment or create
It's a
alignment?
great question. Well, to start with, I look at these geometries as something that is really a way to jumpstart us into a deeper level of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people have been doing meditations for many, many years, and some people are just brand new at it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a time, I think it's really interesting that people who are just getting started can catch up with those of us who've been doing this work for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it is being able to connect into these frequencies with this field that's happening. And the field right now is really shifting.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Gregory was mentioning antenna systems, what does an antenna system do? Well, it's out there to be a receiver, to communicate with different higher dimensions. Like if you're thinking about an antenna that is broadcasting messages or that is able to work with, even all kinds of different solar information out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about how do we connect with something that we can't see. And so these antenna systems, based on these principles of sacred geometry, are giving us that ability to establish and maintain that connection. So
Mm.
once that connection is there, it's like, when you go into a place in nature that's absolutely beautiful. I mean, you could be in a bad mood before, but then you go and you're walking by a river and there's this beautiful sound, this rushing of the water, and you feel the breeze on your face, and you see these beautiful little spring flowers that are coming up. It's pretty hard to still be a little off, because
Mm-hmm.
the energy of where you are becomes so abundant to you that it shifts where you are
Mm-hmm.
emotionally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Physically. And so, so we're using those same principles to help people make that shift and maintain that shift
Mm-hmm.
so that they have a connection that is sourcing them. And that, it starts to really trigger things like their intuition, their creativity. And, the thing that people really are finding that they're doing is get out of the way. Just get out of the way.
Yeah.
What's important for us to all learn how to do is be present. Show up here
Yeah.
right now. And when we're in that place where we're being supported to connect,
Mm-hmm.
allow ourselves to do it. Now,
Exactly.
and then, the other thing that we talk to people about, like with the pendant, is when you first get it, create an intention. And each day when you put it on, create an intention. And that clarity, because, we're in a free will planet here,
Mm-hmm.
the intention, our choices have power. And so when you put that together with the connections, it's,
Mm-hmm.
things really, really take off.
Yeah.
And relationships get better. People aren't operating on automatic pilot the way
Mm-hmm.
they used to be. Things start showing up in our lives just automatically. However, I believe that things like serendipity are natural. It's when we're not naturally recognizing what's going on there, it's because we're blocking ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
or we've been
Mm-hmm.
blocked by something else.
Yeah.
So when we unstop that and we allow the flow to really be in that divine uh, realm,
Yeah.
then all kinds of wonderful things happen.
And really what you're talking about is what I talk about is tapping into that quantum field, tapping into that field of potentiality. And you've got these geometrics, these forms that facilitate that happening.
Absolutely. It's again and again, all those different things that I showed in that one slide about
Mm-hmm.
the electromagnetic pollution, the fear, the stress, the judgments, the toxins, the way they affect us negatively, is they disconnect us.
Hmm.
So what we
Our
are,
own thoughts.
they disconnect our own thoughts. It, which is why, sadly enough, so many non-democratic and even democratic regimes use fear to get people out of thinking clearly,
Yeah.
out of connecting to their heart, because all of the problems that we have today, all the diseases, all the difficulties, it all comes down to one thing, and that's being disconnected from higher self,
Yeah.
being disconnected, as you call it, the quantum field, disconnected from soul. And when that energy flows into us and we are connected, then the other things don't hold as much power. We are
Right.
not pushed off our center,
Exactly.
and it affects our health, our thinking,
Mhm.
our joy, our well-being, all of it.
Yeah.
It's always, and by connection, any of the aspects of creation that we can start to use and ride,
Mhm.
then, like Gail said, when we're in nature, we feel that natural vibration.
Mhm.
But so much of the time, we're around our computers, our cell phones, where there's a lot of cement, where there is not so much of an opportunity to be
Mhm.
quiet.
Yeah.
And so at that time, some of these tools are vibrating with the essence of
Mhm.
creation, and that brings us into that same state, which
Exactly.
opens up so many more possibilities.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yes. I mean, I talk about that often around frequency, and that how
Mhm.
disease is at a particular frequency,
Mhm.
control is at a particular frequency, fear is at a particular
Mhm.
frequency. And you're talking about providing a means to elevate our frequency. You and I
Mhm.
are doing that in our own way, differently. However, it's really the same focus, which is when you raise your vibration, when you operate at a higher frequency, we're talking about that being in your cells, that every cell in your body is vibrating at a different rate than it was when you're concerned about something, when you're stuck in something.
Mhm.
And so that gives you the capacity to be able to create. So if illness is down here and you're vibrating at a higher level, it's just not going to impact you, because you're there for creation and you are looking forward and not around looking into what's not working.
Absolutely. And the beautiful thing about a tool, um, it's like we consider all of these things that we make tools, and a tool is like a hammer that you could use to build the house. You could crack a walnut with it. You might hit your thumb, and it's not the hammer's fault. And when you're done building the house, you built the house, not the hammer. But
Mm.
it's so nice to have the tool to help you leverage the energy.
Mhm.
And that's literally what it's doing. It's doing the heavy lifting so you can be present with focusing on what you are creating, what you are sharing, what you are doing to be of service to all.
It's doing the heavy lifting. I love that. There's just something about that, yeah, that's so many of us are looking for, how can this be easier? Because
Mhm.
it can be. It can be. And
Mhm.
we don't have to take the stairs. We can take the elevator.
Exactly.
And, we can experience joy in the process.
Hmm.
It's become so difficult for so many people. And a lot of it is they are feeling separate. They are feeling hopeless in so many ways
Hmm.
because of economic situation, the world situation, and bottom line, when we can discover that joy within us right now,
Hmm.
that's where you go to tap into soul. And then you can make a difference for someone else because that's what you have to share. What's real. You have yourself and that love that you are. And that always can get us into a better space when we're interacting with others from a place that we're all getting higher.
Yeah, because that's what we're here to do, is to create. And so when we are in that act of creating, we're not thinking about being unhappy. We're not thinking about what we don't have. And we are perpetuating that evolution, that growth, that expansion, because
Exactly.
that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
So, you can tell I love this a lot.
And there's no better time than now.
Mhm.
We're faced with a lot of dilemmas when we look out at our world and we think, how are we going to get from here to there?
Mhm.
And yet, sometimes we're in a place where things seem to just emerge. Have you ever experienced in your lifetimes where you thought, how am I going to put this together? You just don't see it as a step-by-step process.
Mhm.
And there's like a quantum leap that happens
Yep.
that's really hard to identify. How do I actually get there?
Because it's
It's
not a step by
utilize.
step, is it?
It's exactly. And utilizing our intuition, utilizing our creativity.
Mhm.
And as we're talking about this frequency, shifting into this frequency, well, not only does it affect our personal lives, but it affects everything around us and everyone around us as well. And
Say
so
more
the more
about that,
that
would
we're
you?
doing this,
Sorry, I
yeah,
interrupted you to ask you to say more.
yeah, absolutely. Um, well, here's an interesting thing. Um, I remember years ago there was this woman who had gotten one of these pendants, and she worked in a prison. And shortly afterwards, came back and said, "People are treating me so much nicer, so
Mm.
much more respectfully." There was another woman who was working in a hospital, and she was working with some patients that were, really having a rough time. And she had actually she had one of these in her pocket and found it missing. And it was like, oh my gosh, what happened to it? And then she found that where it was, this little, we call it eye connect, had fallen out of her pocket and was underneath the bed of a patient that was very curmudgeonly and was
Mhm.
having a rough time. Well, the pendant was there, and all of a sudden the person like was happy, was changed.
Goodness.
It's the field. The
Mhm.
field is so essential.
Yeah.
So what is the field? The field, we're talking about energy. And when we do things to facilitate that natural flow, what
Mhm.
does life want to do? It wants to create in the way that it's divinely programmed to create.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
as we step out of the way, as we open up the channels for that flow, amazing and what someone says magical things start to happen. Is it
Mhm.
magical? I think it's actually very, very clearly part of this whole structure of how universe is created. And we get a chance to play with it.
So I want to circle back with that because I totally agree with you, and I love how you're describing that, Gail. And I love the story of the curmudgeonly gentleman. Um, I touched in the very beginning, and both of you mentioned how the Egyptians were so tuned into this. Ancient cultures were very tuned into this. The Mayan structures that I have seen in Mexico, totally tuned into sacred geometry. So why did it get covered over? Why did it get quote unquote forgotten?
Part of it is the way we have started creating our modern technology. It started in the 1800s with the Industrial Revolution, excuse me, and what's been happening to human beings in the form of the technology we've been founding or following is creating more and more separation with the kinds of things with electromagnetic pollution, with people moving away from farms and away from the natural order of the way the land worked into cities, and more disease started happening, and people were put into assembly lines. Now, assembly lines meant people had to start moving in time with machines. And we've followed a path that's really been a form of technology that has been slowly killing us and everything around us. And so I believe that there have been other civilizations on this planet that have worked with interdimensional energy flow. I mean, you look at some of the 125-ton blocks of stone that have been moved so efficiently in past building structures compared to today. But regardless of that speculation, I think what we need to do is recognize that things aren't working completely in a way that we're being served by the way our technology is growing. So what we're suggesting is not to abandon that, because we can't. We're too dependent upon everything going on with Bluetooth and the electromagnetic frequencies and what we've created. But what we've got to do is bring some balance in for the human bodies, for the human soul, literally, so that if we can work with some other tools simultaneously to maintain our health and well-being. Because if we don't, we're going to continue down a path where climate change is just the canary in the coal mine that's saying something is off. And what is really the issue is we are driving ourselves toward extinction if we follow the same pathways of technology, which is shifting our thinking as well, which you mentioned at one point. Because if we don't start connecting with the higher aspects of our being that allow us to appreciate that we are part of all, that we're here to be in service to all. And that includes not only other human beings and ourselves, but the plants, the animals, the insects, the earth and the mineral kingdom. We need to work as a whole and recognize that, or we're going to box ourselves into a corner where there will just be another major start over for human beings as well as the planet.
Let me take a breath with that and ask you to speak, one of you to speak about how we can transform our environments, our homes, maybe just leave it to that, or our homes, but our immediate environments using sacred geometry.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, Laurie, and it's really what's driven us all of these years that we've been together. Years ago, I was fascinated with the work of Buckminster Fuller, and you might be aware of him. He's the one, who created the geodesic dome, and he created this book called Synergetics. And within that book, he talked a lot about tetrahedrons, understanding how energy works with this beautiful form. A tetrahedron is a three-dimensional triangle. And so when I first met Gregory, he was carrying around this box of these geometries with all these tetrahedrons in them. And it was really kind of fun. And I said, oh, you must know the work of Buckminster Fuller. He didn't. And I said, well, you're going to get to know it. Well, anyhow, we recognized almost immediately when we met that we had work to do together. That even though, we came from different backgrounds and we hadn't done anything like this before in our, in this life, we realized that what we wanted to do was we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to create something that would shift the frequency of our lives, of people on the
Mhm.
planet,
Mhm.
and help to raise the consciousness. So we saw our opportunity with sacred geometry. We started to realize that, I remember when I first started to pick up some of these geometries and I said, wow, you can feel this. There's energy coming off of this.
Mhm.
And so that's what we've done all these years is we've developed these different geometries that can be placed in your home, can be placed in your office. There's a lot of people who are therapists who use these in their offices, and they find that their conversations go deeper. People are more
Mm.
relaxed. They're more able to connect with their inner wisdom.
Right.
And so, those kinds of things happen. Even lawyers who have told us that in their office, when they have these things, that people aren't bickering with each other the way that they used to. So, so these are not only things that we can wear on our person, but things that you can place in all different ways in your work, in your business, in your
Mm.
home, and help shift the energy because we are living in structures that are blocking us. And
Mhm.
so when we bring in something that serves as an antenna system, as a way of connecting, then that energy starts to flow and
Mhm.
we feel it.
Wow. Hmm. I, I'm so aware of how needed this all is and how everything comes down to really two geometries, but everything comes down to consciousness and to the way in which we either recognize consciousness and realize that we are part of everything, or we continue down the path of feeling separate and continuing the path of forgetting, of staying in the place of forgetting who we really are, what we're about, what life is about, and what's possible.
Mm,
And so
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you are introducing in introducing this work to our audience, another way of connection, another way to jumpstart the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought this up because for years, we've been wanting to write a book
Hmm.
and it takes a lot. It takes a lot of focus and
I
time.
know I'm at the end of mine, and yeah, I think
Oh, well,
I
go
need
for
your
it.
pendant.
Yeah. And when we thought about, well, how are we going to start? And we know that for both of us, it's really about raising consciousness.
Mhm.
So we started our book, chapter 1, with what is consciousness? And we're actually offering to everyone an opportunity to get a free chapter, our first chapter, 1, what is consciousness? And all they need to do is go to our website, which is iconnecttoall.com/chapter. And
And
the way
that's the
that I
number
connect,
two. I'm going to
it's
just
the
interrupt you
number
there. The
2.
number two.
It
To those
is.
people who are listening, and it will be in the show notes too.
Oh, good. And so, you'll really get a sense of where we're coming from,
Mhm.
that this is all about raising consciousness
Yeah.
because it's about us. And there is a consciousness to creation, and it's called love.
Mm.
And when we understand that this foundation is always here, it is intrinsic to this structure. And it's a great way to help us move out of the separation that we've been so inundated with
Yeah.
and move into connection.
I just want that to land with people. Yeah. To move into connection. Gail and Gregory, thank you so much for everything that you've offered. I feel like we could go another hour and we would not
Mm,
be we would not be done. I urge people to get your book, Sacred Geometry: The Universal Language of Divine Alignment, and and to explore what's possible. This is an invitation, and I see Wisdom Talk Radio in that way all the time. It's an invitation to exploring, to being that inner researcher and seeing what's possible. So thank you both for being such great guests today.
Oh, thank you,
Laurie.
Laurie.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been really enjoyable to
Oh,
share with you and your listeners.
thank you. Thank you. And thank you, our audience, our listeners, our viewers, for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Remember that you can find us on every platform that's out there. We're there. And join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. Because when you tune in and then when you share it, if you've loved today, leave us a review, because that helps other people discover Wisdom Talk Radio. It helps people discover the kind of wisdom that is here, the kind of exploration that's here. And that all goes towards transforming the world, what we're all here about. So for yourself, if you want to know more about your own quantum connection and your quantum connection style, go over to the Baca Institute and take the quantum connection quiz now, and you'll discover something new. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.